Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the way this is fitting so far. Now I need to move on, and I actually need to install the bungs because of the shoulder height of these bungs. For the steel ones, it's 175 thousandths, and for the aluminum, this little shoulder thickness there is 225 thousandths. So you got more than an eighth, less than 3/16 here, and a little bit less than a quarter inch on there. So that would change our dimensions for the next pieces that we need to make, which would be a piece coming up like that and another one coming across like that. The steel bungs, I have 6 of them. Now there's actually 6 holes going across the top of the core support here. I'm only going to use 4, basically the 4 that are directly in front of the radiator. Now these holes are not, this is not a factory core support. This is an aftermarket, made in China kind of thing. And I mentioned in the coolant reservoir build that it's some of the mounting holes and things like that are either not in the right spot or they're missing altogether. I don't know. These holes are not meant to be used for mounting anything, at least from the factory. And this one here is fairly centered up through the thickness of this portion right there. The rest of these are not. And they're a 3/8 inch hole, and I need to make them a 1/2 inch hole to drop these bungs into place. So one thing I'm just gonna drill this one out to 1/2 inch, plop in my bung. These I'm gonna have to kind of move. They're a little bit towards the front, so I need to move them back a little bit. So there's gonna be 4 in these locations here. Then I'm gonna have 2 more. I have 6 total. 2 more that are gonna go on the inside in this location here. So that's gonna have clamping force down like that, and clamping force this way, which is actually, again, also clamping force pushing down on the radiator itself. So that's where those 6 are gonna go. Now the aluminum ones, I've got 3 of these. These are actually going to go in the fan shroud that I made around the radiator. So there'll be one over here on this end, one kind of here in the middle. It won't be quite in the middle because of the electric fan, and another one here towards the passenger side. So this whole thing's gonna have to come out. We're gonna have to take the fan shroud off of the radiator so we can drill the holes, dress everything, and weld in these bungs right here. So these 3 are gonna go in these locations here. So I've allotted, when I was cutting these pieces here, I made them larger so that I can trim them down if need be to allow for this increased thickness that the shoulder here is going to create. So this is good, but I thought I'd go ahead and get these installed and then finish out the rest of the structure here. So that's what we'll do. We'll get the drill out, we'll get the little burr, probably just put it on the drill even though it doesn't spin very fast. This is pretty thin metal, so I should be able to move that hole and resize it to where I need it to be. So we'll just go ahead and get started on that. So as I just mentioned, this hole here that's closest to the driver's side of the truck, that hole's pretty well centered. So I'm just gonna put a drill bit in there, make it the size I need, and drop my bung in there. Alright, so that fits good. We'll come back later and we'll dress this up, get the paint off of there, and prep that for welding. Now I just gotta come in here, move these holes a little bit. They're gonna go back towards the firewall and get them to the size that I need. Okay, for the bungs that are going to go on the inside right there, I'm just going to measure over from the edge of these outside bungs I'm gonna go 2 inches in. I'm going to set this back in place just as a reference. Alright, so we'll mark these. The center of our hole will be a 1/2 inch below the surface here. There. Alright, let me center punch and drill those out. So I've test fit all my bungs. Everything is where I want it. So we'll just gear up. I got the grinder out, and we'll get these prepped for welding. So I've said it in several of my other videos, anytime that you weld something with threads, whether it be internal, female threads in this case, or you weld a bolt or something like that that has male threads on it, always chase your threads. It's a real easy way to get a bolt or a nut stuck on something, in which case you got to drill it out or cut it off or just completely redo it. It's really, really cheap insurance to do it this way. And this hole went pretty easy, but there are a few chips on there. So always chase your threads after you weld them. Okay, so I've chased the holes, reinstalled the radiator, put the this piece that we fabricated back on. Now I'm going to get my measurements to make 2 more pieces. That's the piece that comes up like this and the cap that goes across like this. So I guess we'll get started. I'm going to get a few measurements. I'm measuring off the face of the bung that we just welded in. So I'm putting a straight edge up against there. So we have 1 inch to the center line of the bung. So we'll just go 1.5. So this top piece will be 1.5 inches wide, 30 inches long. So now we need to get our depth here. Set that there. Now I need to push down a little bit on the radiator to kind of compress these little pads a little bit and give it a little bit of resistance. Push down. Inch and a quarter. So we need one piece 1.25 inches wide, another one 1.5 inches wide. Let me check. Let's see. Here's the pieces we've been cutting on. We made those two pieces. That's 3.25. So we got plenty of material here to get these two pieces. So we'll set up with the saws and start cutting these out. Alright, so I cut everything. I did it off camera. You guys have seen me cut material before. But again, 1.5 inches on one, 1.25 inches on the other one. So the 1.5 inches goes right here on top. Like that. And the 1.25 inches is going to go down this way. So that's going to work. Yeah, that'll work. So I'm going to take it inside. We're going to jig up these two pieces at a 90-degree angle like that, and put a few tack welds on them. So let's go do that real quick. Alright, so this piece has cooled down quite a bit. I'm going to test fit it again. Drop that down. And sink a little bit lower. Alright. Actually, what I want to do now, push everything down. I want to relieve some of the material that's under here, under this little kick up. So I'm going to scribe an area right there that we're going to cut out. Same on this side. That's a good scribe line. That's a good scribe line. Alright, so we're going to cut out these little pieces here on each side of this bracket. Okay, so I've clamped this piece in place, and that's where we need it to be in its permanent location. Now we got to start putting these together so that these join up like we want them. Actually, going underneath this bracket seems to be pretty bueno. Now, one thing we need to check, those aluminum bungs had a shoulder on them that was 225 thousandths, so just shy of a 1/4 inch. So we're going to measure the distance between the aluminum fan shroud and the inside of this piece. With everything level, about 3/16, so 187. It's actually not bad. Let me look at something. If I get this at a 90-degree, where's that put me? Just shy of a 1/4 inch, which is right where we need it to be. Down here a little bit. That's a little bit tight. I'm supposed to do an 1/8 inch. I'm thinking, I think we jig it up like it is and weld it. So let me make some marks and we'll move it over to the welding bench. So let's test fit this again. Make sure everything's still where we want it to be. About there. Okay. Looking good. So it looks a little utilitarian right now. We're going to fancy it up here in a little bit, but I still want to get a few more things done. Right now I'm going to mark out the locations for the 6 bungs that we welded in, the 4 here on top, and then the 2 here into the side. I'm going to mark those, drill it through the aluminum so that I can install the hardware and kind of snug it down a little bit. And then I'm going to mark and drill my holes for the 3 aluminum bungs that are going to go into the aluminum fan shroud. So I'm going to clamp this in place and we'll start making some marks on here. So I've got my holes drilled here. I'm going to go ahead and mark my holes in the retainer itself, and then transfer the holes to the aluminum fan shroud. It's kind of drizzling outside right now, so and the weather guessers are calling for a bunch of rain today and for the next few days. So I'm going to try and get all my fabrication done out here before the weather hits, because then I can just hold up in the garage and do all the welding. So let me get those drilled out and then we'll transfer them to our fan shroud there. Okay. So we'll go ahead and mark these holes. I'll probably even center punch them as well, just so my Sharpie marks don't get washed off. Okay. Okay, so putting just a little bit of a center punch in there. Now I know that my mark is not going to wash off or anything like that. And I can leave it like this for a little while and come back to it later while we finish some work on the bracket itself.